Right.
But how do you solve a kind of situation like you and your boss, or you and your customer client, right? Customer, client, CEO, and have a kind of conflict each other. How do we going to solve this issue?
So
But like your question point is trust is that point. Okay, doing well is no problem. Okay, it's getting problem at that time. How do we going to build in trust relationship? How are we going to do that? This is most concerned for younger people trapping.
right.
Also,
Basic
Ivan as a senior people has a more concerns about how to solve that kind of people, to how to solve, especially that the target person is some case of incompetent, or some can not skilled, or some not knowledgeable. How are we going to handle this? This is a very difficult issue. Or we're going to carry this client is easy, but if possible, we try to keep going, right?
Right. Of course, we want to keep going, but I think my mistake in retrospect is that I basically, once the project, it became clear that our entire design would not benefit the organization, and that the actual design, what they needed, would require a lot more budget. If at that time, actually the only suitable approach would have been to say, okay, so this is based on what you want, this is what it's going to cost, and so take it or leave it, basically. Because what happened is that we got a bigger scope, and that was the situation. Now, because arbitrage was already in place at that time, because trust was lost between our company and especially the people below the CEO. Then at that time, we were forced to make something that would not be profitable for us. So we didn't like we didn't even like to have the project anymore. At the same time, the people in the organization were not happy because they were not exactly getting what they felt they needed for their work. So at the onset of the project, basically, we already knew that we would never make their people happy. We would never be happy based on what we had to deliver for the price that was to be negotiated.
How did you settle down?
Well, basically, it was settled down after 3 months. The arbitration company advised the clients to hold the project, and
you mean who did arbitrage?
A big consulting company, C.
Oh, not your company.
No.
Oh, okay. Just a little bit complicated, right?
Complicated, very complicated.
So okay, I want to listen to your opinion. If your position, okay, kind of sophisticated situation, complicated situation, like commingle with client people, and how do you going to solve this?
Right. So what's very difficult in that situation is that. Well, I mean, there were many things at stake, right?
For example, why I have questions. This question is because my senior position, right? Instead of 30s, 40s, I am 70s. So I have seniority to talk with people. And so, if my position, how do you going to handle those situations?
Right. So in that case, I think somebody needs to be just like we have here in this diagram on your screen. Needs to take a few steps back and look at the situation objectively. Look at the situation. Okay, is there any way that we can resolve this in a way that is satisfactory to both parts? The way that what we missed there when everything was under pressure, because there was a very serious risk for both sides that this would become a legal case where this had to be brought to court, and once it is brought to court, then you can be sure that there are two sides will be losing. So basically,
you mean brought court means sued?
Sued, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because on the one hand, once
okay, just moment. You said step back to the original plan. You said
no. Step back and look at the situation at hand. Okay, where do we stand, and how do we get there, and what can we do? Actually, basically, what can we do to reestablish trust between these two parties? How can we make sure that both sides, going forward, will actually attain a certain level of satisfaction out of this project? I think what did not happen at that time is that we did not fully, from our side as a supplier, we did not fully get the satisfaction of the customer. And the customer was not strong enough to actually get the satisfaction of the people on the floor. So there was not one customer, there were a lot of customers on many different levels that were basically revolting, and they were not effectively being managed with their CEO anymore. So in that situation, I would have probably been much better to say, okay, to not under time pressure try to rewrite and respec the contract, and then based on the new specification decide that this would never going to fly, but just trying to squeeze everything into a small box, the small budget. That was not the right decision. That was not the right decision to make. It was the decision to avoid a court case, but in the longer run, as it turned out, it was uncontrollable, because without that satisfaction on both sides, this project was doomed to be failed.
So you need to recommend for suitable project size following customer request?
No, basically, I would say that both sides would have been better off without each other. This was not a good match. What we proposed did not match their budget. It was impossible. You cannot basically give somebody a Ferrari when all they have is money for a Fiat. And if it turns out that actually a Fiat is absolutely something that they cannot work with, then it would have been not start at all. Would have been much better than trying to squeeze a Fiat through.
Oh, you mean the scale down of project?
Yep. Yep.
Cut the scope.
The scaled down version was not acceptable in no way, and there was nobody in that organization who could enforce it, because the new CEO was not strong enough to actually enforce it with his organization. In a different project, I worked with a very strong CEO. He was the head of the entity in the Netherlands, like a kind of entity organization. And this CEO was very strong. He inherited 2 bad projects from big consulting companies, and he had a good relationship with one of our salespeople. And the project failed because it became way too big. It became some people could afford a Ferrari, but they wanted a Ferrari with 6 wheels and all kinds of things. Because they couldn't control the scope of the project. So they needed this kind of software, but basically because nobody was strong enough to control the organization until then, they failed twice.
Finally, how did you settle it?
Basically, so we are talking 2 projects here. No? So the first project, the one that failed, that was basically what happened is that the project was halted. We were paid a fee that was basically wouldn't give us any profit, zero profit. Only a lot of headaches. And the company in question continued to run with their original software for another 2 years. The CEO was fired, and I believe that they actually later on implemented a much...
Wait a minute, CEO fired who?
No, the CEO was fired.
Was fired?
Was fired.
Oh, why?
Yeah, because he was totally incompetent.
Oh, I see. So now new CEO will go on judge instead of 6 wheels to switching back to 4 wheels.
Yes. So the new CEO realized that they only had money for a Fiat, so he actually bought a Fiat.
Okay. This is lucky.